All right, Deadleg, you spent, I gather, 40 minutes on the phone with Tom Izzo. You led the court report on that. I read it. Breezed right through it, no problem.
There we go.
What'd you learn from your conversation with Tom Izzo?
Yeah, I gave him a call on Monday, just kind of checked in, we got to talking about a lot. As is often the case, and this is a good problem to have, Izzo, the conversation was over, and most of it was on the record. He asked to go off the record just a couple of times there, but at the end of it, I'm like, I've got too much stuff. Tom, you gave me too much. So, should Michigan State veer back into top 25 territory? I can use some of that stuff down the road, but that was not subject to the court report. The court report was about this. His good friend Nick Saban just retired in semi-shocking fashion, obviously, and they got into the business together basically at the same time when they were, young pups at Michigan State in the 80s. This is before they became head coaches at Michigan State in the same year, I should say, in 1995. So we talked a little bit about Saban. There's some stuff in there. And then in the midst of talking about what Michigan State's been this season and some of the struggles, I did ask if he, had been considering retiring. Would he put it as a possibility that he would retire in 2024? And he said no, absolutely not. And to hear him, we'll link this in the episode description so you can read it, but he does not intend on retiring anytime soon. He did say that when he does retire, he very much sees him going out like Jay Wright and Nick Saban, and by that being, all right, maybe the day of or the day before. He didn't say this explicitly. This is me reading into it. Like maybe it leaks out 24 hours before we actually get the word. But he is not going to have a farewell tour. He doesn't want something to even be known, a month plus. So Tom, you are on the hook. If you retire in April, I'm coming for your ass, because you told me on the record it won't be happening, but he does have that capacity if he wants it. But he's got Jace Richardson, highly ranked prospect, coming in next year, son of Jason Richardson, of course. And it was interesting to hear Izzo, who is always willing, and I do so very much appreciate this, he's willing to be on the record about so many issues that piss him off. And so once again, he went into the problems that he has when it comes to college athletics. He's not anti-name, image, and likeness. He's not players transferring. He's benefited from transfers. He gets all that. It just doesn't sit well with him, this idea that across the sport, there are too many players who are transferring where he doesn't believe that should be the case. On a player-by-player basis, that's a different thing than when you scan and you used to see 2,000 players hopping into the portal. I didn't get too far down that rabbit hole with him, but I understand that. He told me that he wants to fight the system. And his quote was, "The system might get me." I'll try and say it the way I'll try and relay the quote with tone the way he said it to me. He goes, "And the system might get me. The system may get me, but the system may not get me."
How about that?
That's what he said. I was like, well, you're fighting the system right now. Rage against the machine. Tom Izzo. Well, maybe Tom Izzo. Maybe this is no longer the shaka. Maybe this is now for Tom Izzo.
I was thinking Tom Izzo's more like Public Enemy.
All the more, exactly. So he's on the record. He's not retiring in 2024, because this had been, I would say, there was just some open speculation around the sport. Like, man, Tom, it's, every other week he's given a quote here, quote there. Team's a little bit up and down. Like, could he just up and retire? So he had not really answered this directly on the record, to my knowledge, in recent months, if not years. He's sticking around. I think he'll be here at least a few more years. What was your takeaway from the story?
You would agree. I think Tom would agree. He is what people label a quote old school coach, right?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I completely understand how an old school coach would be frustrated by the dramatic changes in the sport, in the way that he is required to do his job. His job has changed dramatically, just like everybody else's has. And I can understand, as you are, at what we normally call retirement age in America, and after you've had so much success, to watch the sport just be flipped upside down by all of these things, I get how that would be frustrating. And I understand how there are certain situations that are exactly as Tom describes them, which is somebody runs into a little bit of adversity, and rather than fight through it, they say, "Oh, I'm just getting out of here. I can transfer. I'm just going to go find a new home." The only thing I am resistant of, or hesitant to go all the way with them on, is that, and I know he didn't say this. I'm not putting words in his mouth, but the implication is that, like, players are transferring, and this is a lot, and this is not good for the sport. And whether it's good for the sport or not has never really been something I care about too much. I just care about, is it fair to the student athlete? I'm not saying you shouldn't ever consider whether something is good for the sport, but I'm more interested in, like, is it fair for the student athlete? And I don't think student athletes should have restrictions on them in that way, in the way that some coaches would like us to go back to. And I don't think every player who transfers is running from something. And again, I know Tom didn't say that, but you get that suggestion from coaches a lot. Like, if if you're not getting the playing time you want, or you're not getting the number of shots per game you want, and you decide to transfer, then you're running from something. And I just don't think that's always true. Like, sometimes you're just looking for a better opportunity, something different. Like, every time you break up with somebody you're in a relationship with, are you running from something, or have you recognized perhaps that this isn't a good relationship for me? Like, every time somebody gets divorced, they're not running from something. Sometimes it's just like, hey, we thought this would be great. It's not. It's time to move on. Like, was Josh Pastner running from something as a coach when he left Memphis for Georgia Tech?
Maybe.
That's my point, right? But we don't go, well, oh my God, it's so shameful. It's like, yo, man, if you stay at Memphis, you're on the hot seat. Georgia Tech's willing to give you a brand new contract, and Memphis is willing to pay you to take it. Maybe it's time to. Shaka Smart, he was at Texas. I don't know that the Marquette job is a better job than the Texas job. I do know this. When Shaka was at VCU, he was offered the Marquette job, didn't take it. And then he was offered the Texas job, and he did take it. So then why did he leave Texas for Marquette? Well, because things were getting difficult. Like, he just lost in the first round. And if you come back, you're on the hot seat. And if you have a bad year, you might be gone. Like, is he running for something, or is he just running to something better, something that feels like a better situation? Just in the sport, Bryce Hopkins went to Kentucky, couldn't play, left. Was he running for something, or was he just looking for something better? Went to Providence and became an All-American candidate. Joe Burrow went to Ohio State, sat on the bench, decided to transfer. Was he running from something, or did he just say, "God, I don't want to keep watching. I want to go play"? By the way, signed a $275 million contract last September. So I just don't. And I know Tom didn't say this, but too often I hear from not just coaches but fans too, like, people transferring is like the worst thing in the world, and it's symbolic of issues facing the youth of America, and I don't always buy that.
Yeah, I had a line in the story, kind of linking Saban and Izzo's coaching philosophies and mantras, really lifestyle, to be honest, where uh, something that is worth doing should be hard to achieve. Essentially, like, if it's not hard, then something's gone wrong. And Izzo particularly leans heavily into this notion, and so he likes players, obviously, that want to come play for him and have this mindset where, like, yeah, no, I'm gonna have bad days. Like, it's gonna be tough. There are gonna be days where I might not even like myself because of how I performed in practice or in a game, et cetera, et cetera. And you know what? Then I'm gonna say I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna do it even better. It's gonna make me a better person. I think Izzo just wishes that his worldview on this, which was way more common 15 years ago, not even getting into 30 years ago, was out there, and it's just not. And he said, I think I can adapt to it better than the kids most times, which is an interesting quote. It might be half accurate, half inaccurate, but the thing that he rapped on, he actually talked about this, and we got away from it. And then as we closed, he went back to it, and I put the quote in the story where I do believe Izzo has a genuine and concern. You could argue, is the concern misplaced? I'm just telling you.
His heart. I want to be clear. His heart's in the right place.
His heart is in the right place, and he talked with me about this in July at the Peach Jam last year. And you know what? I think he talked about it with me in the Peach Jam the year before, and multiple times. And he's talked about it with so many people. He has genuine concern that there are going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of players that just wind up taking this crooked route through college. Do they graduate? Do they not graduate? They get to 22, 23, 25 years old, and they're kind of left standing there, and they're like, damn, did I make the right decision? Some will, some will not. That is life. You learn from your mistakes, etc. But it seems to weigh on him in a genuine way that I understand if you're a cynic when it comes to this stuff and it's like, oh, millionaire coaches. I'm just telling you, with Izzo, his heart is in the right place. And it is those issues that continue to gnaw at him. And it's almost like he refuses to give up on the profession and to give up on coaching because he wants to power through and hope that whenever he does retire, whether it's a year from now, 2, 3, 5 years from now, where his university is and where college athletics is in a better place. Like he is a man almost pushing against a tidal wave at this point. And I find him to be, because of that, one of the more fascinating characters we have in all of sports.